Monday morning, 1976. Your alarm clock, the kind with 2 bells on top, goes off at 6:45. Not a phone, not a gentle gradient light simulation. A mechanical bell that means business. You reach out from under an electric blanket and turn it off before it wakes everyone else. The bathroom is shared. You have 11 minutes before your sister occupies it for 45. The mirror has a crack in the lower left corner that has been there since 1972. You look at yourself and you look like a teenager in 1976. Someone who has not yet been told what they are supposed to look like by an algorithm. Breakfast is whatever is in the kitchen. The television might be on. The morning news is about something difficult, because the morning news in 1976 is always about something difficult. You eat standing at the counter with the efficiency of someone who has a bus to catch. And then you leave the house, and for the next several hours, nobody knows exactly where you are, or what you're doing, or whether you're safe. And this is not a crisis. This is simply Tuesday. This video is about what a week inside that world actually did to the person living it. Not the nostalgic version. The specific psychological account of what moving through a Monday to Sunday in 1976 actually installed in the teenagers who moved through it. What it built that has lasted. What it cost that has never been properly named. Monday through Friday. The high school itself was different from every subsequent version in ways that go considerably deeper than the aesthetic. Woodshop and metal shop and home economics were not optional enrichment activities. They were the institutional acknowledgement that the people moving through that building were going to need to know how to make things and fix things and cook things. If you were in woodshop, you made an actual object from actual wood, using actual tools that could actually injure you. The shop teacher was not concerned with your emotional safety. He was concerned with whether you were going to cut your finger off. He respected you enough to let you do something genuinely difficult with genuinely dangerous tools, and trusted you to develop genuine judgment through direct experience. You learned something in that classroom that has no contemporary equivalent. That competence was not a credential you received, but a capacity you built through practice on real materials with real consequences for real errors. The hallways were the primary social navigation environment of your week. Not a phone, not a platform. The actual physical hallway with actual physical people. Your social status was determined entirely by your behavior in that physical space. You were who you were in the hallway, and everybody could see who that was, and there was no alternative. The lunch table was the primary social institution of the school week. Who sat where and why and how that shifted over the course of months and years was the primary ongoing social curriculum of your formation. Not a curriculum anyone designed, one that emerged from people who had to physically occupy the same space every day. By Wednesday of any given week, you knew things about the people around you that could only be known through sustained physical proximity. You knew who was actually fine and who was performing fine. You knew whose parents were having problems because you could read it in how they carried themselves on Monday morning. After school, on Tuesday or Wednesday, meant something that no subsequent generation has had quite the same version of. The hours between 3 o'clock and dinner were genuinely yours. No platform waiting to fill them. No algorithm curating content. Just the afternoon and whatever you decided to do inside it. What you decided to do was varied and genuine, and largely undocumented. You might walk somewhere, ride a bicycle, sit in a friend's kitchen eating cereal and talking about nothing for 2 hours. Sit in your bedroom and listen to the same album 4 times because you were trying to understand something about it you could not yet articulate. The specific thing that happened in those undocumented hours was not nothing. It was the ongoing work of becoming yourself. Thursday evening meant something. Not Friday yet. Friday was the destination. Thursday was the specific anticipation of Friday, a distinct emotional experience that required the passage of time to produce and that instant gratification consistently prevents. You felt Thursday evening. You did not skip it. Friday arrived differently. It arrived as a genuine threshold, the specific psychological shift of a week that had been structured and required giving way to time that was genuinely yours. The last class of Friday was spent in the specific suspended attention of someone technically present in a classroom and functionally present somewhere else entirely. The bell at the end produced a physical release that no subsequent generation has experienced in quite the same way. When everything is always accessible, there is no threshold to cross. When the threshold exists and has been building since Wednesday crossing, it produces something genuinely different. After school on Friday, the first question was always the same. What is happening tonight? This question was not answerable by looking at your phone. It was answered by talking to people, directly. In the hallway or on the telephone that evening when you called people, and they were home, or they were not home. And if they were not home, you tried again, because there was no other option. Assembling a Friday night from available human ingredients was itself a significant psychological activity. You had to actually know people, know their schedules and their habits, and which parents would let them out and who had a car. This was genuine social intelligence applied in real time to a genuine social problem with no digital assistance. The phone calls happened on the phone that belonged to everyone. The curly cord had a specific radius. If your parents were home, they could hear half of what you were saying. Privacy was a negotiation, not a feature. By the time Friday evening arrived, you had either assembled something or you had not. Whatever it was, it had been assembled through direct human communication, and it existed as a genuine social event rather than as a documented performance of one. The specific thing about a 1970s Friday night that has no contemporary equivalent. Nothing was documented. Nothing was photographed for later distribution. What happened on Friday night existed only for the people who were present for it and in their memories afterward. The specific freedom of an event that contains no performance dimension. Saturday. Saturday in the 1970s was a complete unit of time in a way that Saturday no longer is. If you were between 13 and 17 in the mid-1970s, Saturday morning meant one of two things. Either you were awake early enough to watch cartoons, which, at 13, you were probably slightly too old for, but watched anyway. Or you slept late in the specific deep teenage sleep that is different from any subsequent adult sleep, and woke to a morning that already had the specific texture of lateness and leisure. By late morning, Saturday had a specific question inside it. What are you going to do with this day? The entire day, not the afternoon. The whole thing. If you had a job, it might be Saturday work, the record store, or the gas station, or the grocery store. Real work with real money. The specific satisfaction of earning something through your own effort and competence. The album you bought with your own Saturday money meant something different from the album you received as a gift because the relationship between your effort and the object was direct and unmediated. If you did not have Saturday work, the day opened in front of you with a specific quality of genuine, unstructured time, something the contemporary world has made increasingly rare and that the 1970s provided by the simple mechanism of having nothing else to offer. You might spend the morning doing genuinely nothing, not performed nothing, actual nothing, lying on your bed looking at the ceiling, sitting in the backyard, moving through the house in the aimless way of someone who has nowhere to be and nothing required of them. This nothing was not empty. It was full of the specific interior activity that the undirected mind performs when it is not being directed by an external source. The Saturday afternoon was the primary social laboratory of the week, where the conversations that mattered happened not because anything was scheduled, but because you were in the same place with nothing required, and the conversation simply emerged. Saturday night was the full expression of the freedom the week had made available. Whatever was going to happen that weekend actually happened on Saturday night. And what happened was real and consequential and completely undocumented, and therefore completely genuine. The specific things that happened on Saturday nights in the 1970s, the conversations and the confrontations, and the first times and the last times exist only in the bodies and the memories of the people who were present for them. They are not indexed anywhere. They cannot be searched. Sunday. Sunday in the 1970s was the decompression chamber between the weekend and the week, and it had a quality that no subsequent decade has fully replicated because it required specific conditions to produce. Everything was closed on Sunday. Actually closed. Not some things harder to access. The stores, the businesses. The entire consumer infrastructure of the week was unavailable. Sunday was not a day for doing things in the world. It was a day for being in your domestic space with a specific interior settling that genuine rest provides. The newspaper arrived on the doorstep. The actual physical newspaper with its specific weight and smell and the ritual of reading it that required sitting somewhere for a sustained period engaged with a physical object. Sunday dinner was still Sunday dinner. The gathering of the household at the table. The food that required more preparation. The specific quality of time slowing down around a table where the people at it were simply present with each other. Sunday evening was the week's most complicated emotional moment. The specific feeling of the weekend ending. Not the contemporary anxiety about Monday that social media has amplified into a cultural phenomenon. The older and more honest version. The specific awareness that the time that was yours was concluding and the time that was required was resuming. You felt this. You sat with it. It was not a crisis requiring management. It was simply the rhythm of the week asserting itself. What Sunday installed was the specific capacity for genuine closure that the contemporary week consistently prevents. The week had a shape. It began. It built. It peaked. It closed. You inhabited each phase in sequence and in full. What the week built. Here is the honest accounting of what a week in the 1970s actually built in the teenagers who lived it repeatedly across their most permanent formation years. The capacity for genuine presence. The 1970s teenager was never anywhere other than where they physically were. There was no parallel digital world competing for their attention. Wherever you were, that was where your attention was, because there was nowhere else for it to go. This produced the specific capacity for genuine presence that is increasingly rare in a world where presence has to be actively chosen against the constant available alternative of the device. You did not choose presence. You inhabited it because the architecture of your week made it the only available mode. But decades of inhabiting genuine presence during your formation years installed it as a default orientation rather than a deliberate practice, the specific relationship with anticipation. The 1970s week had a shape that produced genuine anticipation because the shape required time to unfold. Friday had to be reached through Monday through Thursday. Each phase produced anticipation of the next because the next was genuinely not yet available. The 1970s teenager learned through direct experience that the anticipation was part of the experience and not an obstacle to it. That the waiting was not empty time between the good parts, but was itself one of the good parts. The navigation intelligence, the 1970s teenager who assembled their social world through direct human contact, developed a specific and sophisticated social navigation intelligence that has no precise digital equivalent. You knew people, actually knew them, knew who was reliable and who was not, knew how to read the quality of a gathering from the first 5 minutes inside it, knew when to stay and when to leave. This intelligence was not taught. It was built through hundreds of weeks of direct social navigation in the undocumented analog world of the 1970s. The dark humor as survival tool. Every week contained the news, the television in the evening, the newspaper on the doorstep, and alongside the difficult information, the specific cultural processing of that information through the dark comedy the decade produced. MASH on Tuesday nights. All in the Family on Saturdays. Week after week of this curriculum installed the dark humor as a permanent cognitive tool. The specific mechanism that allows genuine engagement with genuine difficulty to be sustained over genuine time. The humor that names the gap between how things are supposed to work and how they actually work. What the week cost. The week that built all of those genuinely valuable things also cost things. Real things that deserve to be named as costs. The absence of adult oversight that produced the genuine freedom also produced the genuine absence of support when support was genuinely needed. The teenager navigating something genuinely difficult. A family falling apart, a situation at school that had become dangerous, something happening to them that they had no adequate language for, had access to the freedom and the self-sufficiency and the dark humor, and did not have access to the institutional support that the comprehensive management of subsequent decades provided imperfectly but genuinely. The self-sufficiency that the week installed carried a specific cost that has never been properly examined. The person who develops deep self-sufficiency during their most formative years develops, along with it, a specific difficulty asking for help that persists long after the conditions that required the self-sufficiency have changed. The reliable person who relies on themselves. The person who handles things because handling things became the default orientation so early and so thoroughly that the alternative orientation became genuinely difficult to access. This is real. It deserves to be named as real, not as the primary truth about the people that 1970s Teenage Weeks produced, as one of the true things, the cost side of the honest accounting.